In the meantime, all the younger generations, the millennials, the Gen Z, the Gen Alpha, are because they can't get a house, they can't afford anything. NIMBYs are absolute total pieces of horrible people. Daycares, childcare, make it literally say to people, look, you will have a home. If you want to have a family and you can't afford it, we will make it so you can afford it. We will promise that, and we will guarantee that. It needs to be done now, like today. Good morning. Okay, new reaction. You all know the drill. Kurzgesagt. Did I pronounce that right? Anyway, reaction to them. Latest video. Talk about Germany. And I'm guessing ahead of time, I haven't seen it. It's going to be the classic population decline, unable to export to other markets, haven't got the population to consume at home, which means you're in a death spiral, unable to access the resources, not enough resources at home. It's your classic national decline. And if Germany is declining, then the whole EU is declining too. Okay, here we go.
Germany will soon crash into the consequences of a fertility crisis made much worse by the mismanagement of the boomer generation.
Fucking boomers, man. It's always... I don't wish bad things generally to happen to people. And I mean this with a big grain of salt and a lot of sarcasm, but boomers just won't die. They won't get out of the way. They hang around in positions of power, feeding themselves money, you know, inflating asset prices, impossible to buy a house, impossible to set up a retirement account, selfishness incarnate. And this is the generation that turn around to, like, you know, millennials, Gen Zs and alphas, and are like, your problem is you have too much, you know, fucking avocado with your toast, when they bought a house worth $2 million for the price of a sack of potatoes 50 years ago.
Demographic collapse tearing up the generational contract may soon destroy one of Germany's greatest achievements, its welfare state. Millennials, Gen Z and younger are left with a huge mess they somehow need to sort while they're outvoted by the grey bloc making the decisions for them. What happened?
That's literally what I said. Quite literally exactly what I said. They won't get out of the way.
Population collapse. Germany was among the first countries to industrialize, and so its fertility rates dropped early in the 20th century. But for 55 years, they've been below replacement at 1.4 children per woman in 2025. Compared to...
Who out there can do the math? If you, yeah, so every generation is smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, which means less workers, which means less taxes, but you're also supporting that generation that will not die and trying to keep them alive.
South Korea, this sounds almost amazing, but it still means population collapse.
0.
Wow. 1.4, then 100 Germans will have 70 kids. When those grow up, they'll have 49 kids, who'll then have 34 kids, who'll have 24. A 76% drop within 4 generations. Many people think there are too many humans anyway, so what's the big deal? Well, at the same time, people started living much, much longer. So we have a fatal...
So you've basically got like 10 people supporting, like, you know, 30.
Mix of way more grannies and way fewer babies. The real crisis...
And this is the generation, the boomer generation, who own, like, most of the assets. Like, they own the houses. Like, in the UK, there was a debate recently, and I was listening to it on the radio. I was listening to it on YouTube, and the guy was like, you know, why is my pension being cut? And it's like, okay, do you own a house? Yes. Do you own it outright? Yes. How much is it worth? And like £2.5 million. So you're sat on an asset worth $2.5 million. You could sell it, release that money, and have a very good quality of life. But instead, you're demanding that children or young people, or even me, my generation, continue to pay for you through the pension system.
German millennials, Gen Z and younger will have to live through is the massive shift in population composition and the transition period. In 2026, Germany is already one of the oldest countries in the world, with a median age of over 45. Almost 2 in 5 Germans are over 50, almost 1 in 4 is older than 65. Only 1 in 8 is a child under 14. Despite its industrial production declining, suffocating bureaucracy and little economic growth, Germany's system is still chugging along and it remains one of the richest countries. The country still has a big population and a big workforce, along with generous social benefits and pension payouts.
Yeah, but it's all based on a system that no longer works. It was all based on cheap, reliable natural gas flowing from Russia. Well, that's now questionable. And the idea that there would always be like a younger generation, which they've had to like subsidize through large-scale immigration, which in recent years, last few decades, people have grown resentful for. So the two primary taps that keeping you going have been turned off, and Germany did not like reindustrialize itself with the modern economy we have today, like the United States did, which is like digital technologies, AI, etc. They're still relying on a 20th century thing of basically building and selling cars, which you constantly need new markets for, which is why they're so desperate to maintain access to the United States.
But soon,
because they don't have a population at home large enough or rich enough to buy all the stuff they make.
The reality of demographics and boomer mismanagement will hit Germany like a freight train.
Yep.
Population crash means that a society and culture loses more than just people. The systems and countries we've built can't just be downscaled. Things stop working.
Yeah, because it's like, imagine half your population suddenly has no money. It's a colossal collapse. It's a genuinely horrible thing to go through. You have to go through the process, and then when it evens out again and you start to get some kind of growth, but if you're in the middle of that transition, it's hell, and we're all about to go through that.
Young Germans are screwed, old ones too. By 2036, 13 million German baby boomers will retire, this big bulge here. But because they didn't have nearly enough kids, way fewer younger people will replace them. In 2030 alone, there might be millions of jobs that...
Yes, because if they basically lived off of everything. They got into power, they voted themselves wealth, they voted themselves opportunities, and they didn't have enough kids to back it up. And we're suffering through that.
Will be impossible to fill. Fewer people working means fewer taxes and resources for the state. Also, services will decline, waiting times would increase for everything from your bags at the airport to doctor's appointments. But the much more urgent issue is retirees. Germany...
That hospital one's a really, really major point. Old people, the inflation for like the cost of healthcare goes up exponentially the older the population gets, because older people need more healthcare than younger people. So that the cost on that, if you have, is insane. Waiting times are going to go up massively. Prices are going to go up massively as demand just skyrockets. And it's not like you can, use a machine to replace a nurse or a doctor. You still need a person there, because most patients don't want to have to deal with an AI machine. They want to talk to an actual person. And you can't scale it, which means you actually need physical people there. So the costs are going to go up insanely. Wait times, everything. It's going to be, we're starting to see it now in a lot of countries.
Has a pay-as-you-go pension system, which means that about 20% of today's salaries is directly paid out to pensioners. This sort of worked in the 1960s when there were 5 working Germans for every retiree. But in 2024, this ratio is down to about 2.5. In the 2030s, it will get closer to 2 workers for 1 pensioner.
The hope is that new tech will make people more efficient so that one person can produce the same amount as like 5 people did 20 years ago. That's kind of the hope. But you're still producing things to sell to people. So you're making more stuff with less and less people able to buy it. So that's why the pyramid starts to collapse. Everything is built on the idea that there's enough people to buy the stuff we're making, and there soon won't be.
And about 10 years after retirement, people tend to get really sick and cause the vast majority of healthcare costs. The math ain't mathing, and it actually never really did. Already in the 1970s, governments began to subsidize the pension funds with tax revenue, pushing the problem into the future, as has more or less every single government since then.
Yeah, because no one wants to bite the bullet. No government wants to be honest, step forward and say, okay, this is the situation. There isn't enough money, and as a result, taxes will go up and services will have to go down in order to cover all this. And no one wants to accept it because everyone has their own little solution. So that the left will start talking about price controls, they'll start talking about massive subsidies, massive levels of tax, wealth, etc. And the right will go, well, just kick everyone who isn't a pure blood out, and then that'll reduce the cost. And it's neither one really is a solution to it. It's just there's going to be pain, and we're all going through it, and it's just that simple.
Well, the future is today. In 2025, the German federal government spent roughly a quarter of its annual tax revenues to fix holes in the pension system, on top of the working population's payments. Let's say that again. 1 in 4 German tax euros is used to pay out pensions today. More than on education, research, infrastructure, and defense.
All to basically keep the boomers alive. Like I said, I don't wish ill, but that's just what it is. It's all that money is being spent on that. Now, imagine the United States, where you have a massive chunk of the money going towards paying off the debt, and you're soon going to have a massive problem with boomers. And now, because of the immigration situation, there's less immigrants coming into the country. The United States has a shrinking population for the first time in decades. Its population is now shrinking per year, which means smaller population, less people paying into the system, less money, you know what I mean? And no one wants to raise taxes, which means it's going to be more deficits going forward. It's going to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse because no one's prepared to actually make the hard decision to say, hey, look, taxes have to go up and services have to be cut if we're going to fix this.
Combined, the wealth of the nation is redistributed from the young and the working to the old and retired. And as the boomers retire, this will only get worse.
Oh, God.
It's money that could be spent on things that help the young and the working part of the population, like incentives to start a family, lower taxes, free childcare.
Well, that's it right there. It's like a solution to the problem is you have to increase the population from the bottom. You need more kids, right? And I hate to say it, but if you put the money from pensions and said, look, we're going to start funneling this massively into childcare programs so parents can have children, and that'll be subsidized and taken care of, free childcare, access to daycares, et cetera, that could really, 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 really help, massively help. What young people need is a place to call a home to raise a family and a way to raise kids that isn't financially destructive. If you could subsidize that, you could actually help improve it. But that's not going to happen because, people having kids today, the young people aren't the ones in charge. The ones who are in charge are the boomers.
Cheap loans to buy homes, investments in education, infrastructure, or clean energy. There are so many things that would help young Germans. But will millennials and Gen Z get to enjoy similar pensions at least? Well, it's not very likely. The current system only works for boomers because their parents had more children and died younger, and because Germany was booming and the problem escalated slowly. Young people today don't have all of that. Okay, that's depressing, but at least the young can take care of their own retirement and save money, right? Well, many sure would like to, but taxes and contributions are about 40% of salaries for the average worker and almost 50% in the highest tax bracket.
Yeah, again, think of that. So like someone like myself, my tax bracket is around 40%, right? Which means while I'm trying to save for my own retirement, I have to give 40% away in taxes. A huge chunk of that goes towards healthcare and, maintenance and infrastructure and stuff, which is fucking terrible, right? And another big chunk goes towards paying other people's pensions. So a huge chunk of my money is basically being wasted on things which aren't actually going to do any help. They're not. They do nothing to benefit me at all. Almost half my money is just gone. If I had even a bit more of that back, or if people in general, then they could put more towards their own pensions and their own futures. But we can't do that because we have to pay for everything else.
It's one of the highest in the world. Together with the rising cost of living and sluggish wage growth, this makes it especially hard for young and middle-aged Germans to generate savings for their own retirements. One of the best investments, wealth generators and places of comfort and security is
at home.
Owning your own place. But due to a mix of NIMBYs preventing new development, increasing mountains of new regulations making building more expensive, and...
Okay, this is going to be a long one. NIMBYs. I can't stand them. They bought a house for the price of a sack of potatoes 20 years ago, right? And now I'm not letting anyone else buy a house. Any new developments they block. They're usually older. They usually always vote. They're always involved, and they just stop anything from getting done because they want to preserve everything exactly how it is, so they get their nice, beautiful view, and the roads aren't congested. In the meantime, all the younger generations, the millennials, the Gen Z, the Gen Alpha, are because they can't get a house. They can't afford anything. NIMBYs are absolute total pieces of horrible people.
Millions of people immigrating to Germany in the last few decades, the housing supply is deeply behind demand. Renting and buying real estate in metropolitan areas where young people actually want to live is so expensive today that even couples with a dual income and good jobs have a really hard time affording it. The generational contract in Germany is broken. And yet, some media voices continue to frame all this as a failure of young people's financial habits. The reality is...
Oh, God, here we go. Yeah, this is the whole thing. It's like you spend too much on coffees and too much on avocado and toast. It's got nothing to do with the fact that, like, you know, you own everything, you sit on it, and you don't let anyone else have any relief. You won't let us have tax cuts for young people. You won't let services for young people. You won't drop your own pensions. You won't sell your own homes even though you can afford to. It's all down to avocado and toast. It's us living life too fucking rubbishly. That's the problem for you, huh? That's always the problem in a boomer's mind. I had it. Ugh.
Young Germans are condemned to pay off a huge loan on the future that the older generations have generously granted themselves. And they don't have the power to change this by voting because German parties just have no incentive to help young people.
Yeah, because there are no young people in the office. It's like I said, they came into power, they voted themselves wealth, which i.e. they taxed from the young, and now they're sitting on it all and being like, well, we're happy, so screw you. Why is it whenever there's a vote, they typically cut things like childcare or things that helping young families or young people? They'll cut those, but they'll always increase things for the older people. Like, inflation-locked pension schemes, et cetera, or, schemes to make it harder to build homes, or things up which make it harder to transfer wealth. Like, why can't we reverse it? Why can't young people get a tax break and the boomers get a massive tax? So whenever they sell something, all that money finds its way basically back into the system to cover the cost of things like, I don't know, childcare or, medical treatments and things of that nature. You know what I mean?
Demographic decline in a democracy is a feedback loop. When seniors are the largest group of voters, politicians make politics for them. This leaves young Germans facing a hard time building wealth or getting their own homes, which makes them even less willing to start families and have children, even if they want to, all of which is making the demographic crash worse. Germany has become a society that works for the old and relies on the young, making it...
That's not just Germany, that's everywhere. I mean, I've lived in the UK, I've lived a bit of time in Europe, I've lived in Australia, and I now live here in Canada. And obviously I know a lot of things about the States as well. It's everywhere. Everywhere you look, the people who have the most control and the most power are boomer generations, or maybe the generation that's just a bit below them. It's always the same mentality. The older I get, the more firmly I believe that you shouldn't pay taxes until you reach a certain age. And then the taxes should come in gradually, so that when you're younger, all the money you make goes into your own pocket so you can actually build yourself something useful, It's
really hard to create new young people. Baby boomers' lives are affected too. With unsustainable pension funds, inevitably millions of older Germans will have to work much longer than they thought. A retirement age of 70 or higher is already being discussed. Today, about 20% of German pensioners live in poverty, and that rate is all but guaranteed to increase significantly in the 2030s. Still, seniors and boomers in total own the vast majority of Germany's wealth. Germans are even arguing about to what extent the costs of social systems have gotten out of hand. Even in a high-tax country like Germany, there's plenty of wealth disparity and opportunities to tax the rich and take pressure off workers. Although, of course, the details are fiercely debated, so we'll not get into this right now. But the scale of the gap between what workers pay...
I am not against a form of wealth tax. I'm really not. I'm not quite sure how it can be applied, but in general, I'm not against it. It's just, for me, something along the lines of, you know, if you have a lot of wealth, you can often borrow against it. And because you're borrowing against it as opposed to selling it, you don't pay a tax because you're borrowing from the bank. I think up to a certain point, above a certain threshold, if you're borrowing from the bank, then you should have to pay a percentage of what you've borrowed as tax. I just think you should. I don't know why. I mean, the argument for that is, well, it's a risk because it's a loan. It's like, well, yeah, but if you're borrowing hundreds of millions of dollars at basically, you know, like 1% above prime, that's like what, 4 or 5%? Like, and your assets are growing at, say, 10 to 20%, like, you're not losing money. You're going to be okay. You really are going to be okay. And it's kind of ridiculous that you're able to do that and not pay tax on it. You know, I think it should, because the point is, like, that money should make its way back into the system so that younger people can have an opportunity, can have an actual chance.
And what's needed to cover boomers' pensions is so enormous that even raising taxes would only buy a bit of time. And beyond pensions, the welfare and healthcare systems Germans rely upon may become unaffordable in the 2030s. The vast majority of healthcare costs occur during the last quarter of your life. So just as the healthcare workforce is shrinking due to demographics, the numbers of
and immigration, let's not forget that. That we're making it hard. Yeah, we're making it harder for doctors and stuff to come here because, you know, we don't like brown people.
Patients will explode. The waiting time for a specialist doctor is already months in the state healthcare system. Okay, but what about immigration? Whatever your opinion on immigration is, pro or against, please put it in a box and ignore it for a moment. We only want to look at it from one perspective. Can it solve the population crash? Let's look at the population again. If a country's pyramid looks like this and you want to stabilize it at the bottom, immigration won't do that. For one, it doesn't actually make your country that much younger.
Yeah, because what it does do, though, is that you're bringing people in who are often already educated, assuming, you know, it's not large amounts of refugees coming in. But they're often like in their 20s or in their 30s, so they're often, so you're not bringing in kids, you're bringing in like a middle bracket type deal, which can then expand the thing there. But it's like, yeah.
Germany, the birth rate of most of its immigrants isn't higher than the locals. And if new immigrants have more children, they tend to adjust to the rest of the population within 2 generations. Sure, immigration over the last few decades has delayed the coming crash, and in the transition period, we'll run into serious worker shortfalls, especially in...
Yeah, because immigrants get old too. You know, just throwing it out there. I live in Canada. One day I'm going to be like in my 60s and 70s, and even though I came here when I was quite young and I've contributed in, at some point I'm going to get older and I'm going to be in a hospital somewhere here, you know.
Healthcare and nursing. So zero immigration doesn't seem wise or feasible. But there's a problem. If birth rates stay as low as they are, or go down even more, then the German population will continue to shrink. And to keep it stable, it would constantly need to be replenished by new immigrants.
And then where are these people coming from? And yeah, it's tough. Fundamentally, the issue is that our entire economic system has been built on there being more young people than old people. And the problem is that we've created this as an incentive structure where the money goes to the old and doesn't really go to the young. Whereas if you want to fix it, you have to maintain a large amount of funds going to the young so that younger people can have families and, you know, rebuild the bottom of the pyramid. But our economic system is not built at all to manage that. Not at all.
Until they age and themselves need new immigrants to pay for their retirement. No matter if you think this is a good idea or not, it's not actually possible. Birth rates are crashing everywhere. Eventually, immigration around the world will slow down massively. The world is running out of young people. So immigration can delay the issue a bit and ease the consequence.
I mean, eventually we'll get like an uptick. You know, things will plateau out, and then you'll start to sort of see a slow rise again as prices drop and things, you know, as things become more equalized, and more of an equilibrium type deal, eventually we'll start to see things start to move back up. But right now, with asset prices and things the way they are, people have just no interest. And I think social media is also playing a massive part in that as well. I mean, new surveys coming out basically saying that women can't stand men. You know, they hate men. The majority of women of a certain, like, I think it's like young, educated, college-educated women hate men. And it's like, I personally think that's more down to spending far too much time on social media. Like, if I spend too much time on Instagram, I leave it thinking, God, like, you know, women and certain types of people are just horrible. But then it's like, well, no, Instagram's built to generate rage, you know?
But that's it. Germany either has to solve its demographic crash or its welfare state and pension systems will break. Conclusion and opinion part. So, how over is Germany? The demographic crisis is the greatest danger to German living standards and social cohesion. And the same crisis is unfolding in all Western countries. Things are about to escalate in Germany
and China. Southeast Asia itself isn't too bad, but China's screwed.
Italy, France and Poland, but the same issues are also on the horizon in the US, Argentina or Canada. The reality nobody wants to talk about is that solving the demographic crisis will be very painful. It will require sacrifices from everyone, and politicians seem incapable of addressing it honestly. But to solve the demographic crisis for real, something no nation has done successfully so far might mean doing things that are intensely unpopular with older voters. Instead of spending 25% of Germany's entire budget on the...
Please say we're going to put that money into the bottom to fund like childcare, daycares, subsidizing, say something like that. I think they did that in Iran, and after the Iran-Iraq war, and it did have some success. The people had children. Women were basically paid to have kids. It was like, look, if you're a family and you're married and you have children, okay, the more kids you have, we will massively cut your tax burden and we will actively subsidize it. Like the state will pay for you to have more children if you want to have more children. Like we're not going to allow cost be the factor that prevents you from having kids if you want to have kids.
The elderly, especially the wealthiest among them, we could invest more of it in families, paying for housing and childcare and making it an amazing deal to have a big family. More than anything, our attitude to kids and families needs to change. Demographics move slowly, but then unstoppably. The next few decades...
Yeah, it's like a landslide. It can go quite slow. You see those videos of like lava making its way across the road? Like it goes slow. It's like quick. But as soon as it hits, it cannot be stopped. It cannot be stopped. It has to be addressed early on and dealt with early. And consistently. Consistency is the key to solving it. They should be introducing these things now, like today. Yes, if you're elderly, like if you're a pensioner and you have a house worth a couple $1 million and you have a few $1 million in the bank, you should not be getting a state pension. You shouldn't be getting it. And quite frankly, I think you should have a means-tested health system as well. Like if you can afford your own healthcare, you're getting your private healthcare. All that money should be devoted to basically making sure that younger people have a future. Period. Build houses, daycares, childcare. Make it literally say to people, look, you will have a home. If you want to have a family and you can't afford it, we will make it so you can afford it. We will promise that and we will guarantee that. It needs to be done now, like today.
It will be rough,
but old people vote and politicians like votes, and that's it.
But our societies can decide just how rough and what kind of societies will emerge on the other side.
Bye. Okay, we're done.
Making this video
And stop.